right? And I think most self-employed business owners, if you're brave enough to go into business, if you're badass enough to go into business for yourself, you're pretty darn creative, whether you identify with being in a traditional creatives or not. But it's going to take creativity. So what I like to focus on is how can we leverage who we are naturally, be more of who we are, instead of being taught productivity ideas that don't work with our natural way of being. This is something I have done for as long as I can remember that enables me to be super efficient and productive and plays into who I am naturally.
Welcome, Badass Manifester. I am so glad you are here. I'm your host and head coach, Ashley Gordon, master mindset and manifestation biz expert, founder of the quantum coaching certification, and multiple six-figure entrepreneur obsessed with empowering you to create quantum leaps in your energy, your life, and your business. This is the show to help you make magic your everyday normal, where the ripple effect is real and the guest experts are world class. My mission is to power your conscious and subconscious mind with manifestation teachings, business tools, and coaching techniques to put your potential into action. Consider this your weekly up level. Are you ready for quantum transformation? Let's do this. Badass Manifester, I am so excited for today's episode. It is such an honor to have such an amazing guest on our show today. And I'm also so excited because the Manifest 5-Figure Month free training series, it kicks off today, baby, at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's happening. So if you have not yet signed up for it, definitely go to the link in the show notes or the link in my Instagram bio and get yourself enrolled, because I am going to teach you how to get into full-blown abundance mode, how to get paid for your gifts, how to maximize your magnetism. And I'm just so freaking excited about it. And also the cart for the Receive Like a Quantum Coach program that is designed to teach you how to receive money for your gifts in the world, how to rewire your limitations into six-figure belief systems. And it is an online, on-demand course that will radically shift your energetic relationship with money and the energy of receiving and teach you how to manifest and receive abundance with ease for your work in the world. Yes, with ease, because that is so freaking possible. And it's really for the person who's just done complaining about money and believing that you don't deserve financial abundance and constantly feeling like you're not where you want to be financially as a coach or entrepreneur. And watching from the sidelines as other coaches rake in the dough while you're hustling your ass off, not seeing the same results. I want to help you transform that. And this program does that. I've had so many coaches go through this program who have come out finally paying down debt and bringing in more money than they've ever imagined, hitting their financial goals and really starting to make progress in their business. And so I can't wait to potentially have you be part of the program. And we're doing a giveaway as well, where during this 3-day challenge training series, we're going to be giving away one spot in the Receive program. And to enter that giveaway, you have to go to the post on my Instagram with the 500K balloons, because guess what? The podcast has hit 500,000 downloads. I am so forever grateful for you for finding this show and listening to the show and being part of this show, being part of this energy. It's huge. It's huge. It's huge. It gives me chills just saying that. And I want to honor you, and I want to thank you. And I want to thank Brett Gordon, my podcast manager, who always goes above and beyond to celebrate the show, to celebrate me, to help me recognize these great accomplishments. He's the one who actually brought me those beautiful balloons. And it came on a very important day when he brought me those balloons. That was actually the day that my dad had passed away. And so it was like a really big bright spot and a really big celebration that it was just a beautiful synchronistic moment. And I'm forever grateful for him. And I'm forever grateful for the role that he plays on this team. So thank you, Brett. And he's my brother from another mother and another father. He's my soul brother, for sure. And we want to thank you, which is why we're doing this beautiful giveaway because it just feels right. It just feels right. So if you want to be entered into that giveaway, make sure you go to the post on my Instagram, 500K balloons, and put your put your information in there, and you'll be entered. I'm so grateful, you guys. I'm going to do a whole separate episode on the energy of 500,000 downloads and dive into the art of celebration because it's really been a huge part of my journey, and celebration is so magnetic. And so I want to teach on that a bit to you and help you hone that because I know so many people, we don't give ourselves credit. We don't give ourselves that credit. And it's so important because what's the point of all of this if we're not giving ourselves that validation, that meaning for what it is to us, not to anybody else. So super excited for that. So yeah, come into the 3-day free training. Come into the Receive Like a Quantum Coach program. The program is so accessible. It is so reasonably priced. Go to the sales page when it launches and check it out. And go get yourself enrolled in the giveaway and potentially receive a spot in the Receive program. So much. And then also the QCA waitlist is still popping. Every week we're welcoming in more waitlist people, and the waitlist people are saving $1,000 on their tuition. So if that calls to you as well, the link in my Instagram bio, the link in the show notes. There's just so much goodness happening here. And I just constantly want to feel like I'm giving back to you over and over and over again. That's my goal. Without further ado, I'm excited for today's episode. We have Jeffrey Shaw. He is such an incredibly accomplished human being. We talk all about living that self-employed life, and he drops some amazing knowledge for you guys to help you grow and to help you earn and to give and all the things. So I can't wait for you guys to listen and have a beautiful day. I have a special guest today. His name is Jeffrey Shaw. I'm so excited to have him here today. He is super accomplished. He is a TEDx speaker. He is the host of a top-rated podcast, The Self-Employed Life. And he is here to shed amazing light with you guys on how you can tap into what it's like to be, self-employed. I know it's a dream for so many of you, and I'm really excited for him to be here and to share all of his knowledge with us. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Ashley. I'm excited to be here with you.
Yay. So share a little bit about who you are and how you came to be so accomplished. You've got books and podcasts and TED, and you're a speaker. Like share how you got here.
So, well, first to this day, it's like, I appreciate you saying, oh, you're so accomplished, but you know what? The bottom line is if you keep your head in the right place, no matter what you accomplish, you're just an ordinary person, right? I mean, one day I was out walking. At the time I had 2 dogs. I've since had to let one go, but I was out walking my 2 dogs, and I got this glowing message from, someone who just watches what we do on social media. And oh my gosh, it was so complimentary and wonderful. And I thanked her, but also wrote back and said, and at the time that I'm writing this, I'm picking up dog poop. Right.
I love that.
It was for her and it was for me. It's like, and check in to know that, yes, we're accomplished. We set out to do big things. And if we have our head in the right place, we stay just like totally normal people that my mom would be proud to still call son. So, gosh, my journey has been crazy, and the crazy because it's just been, I've been self-employed my whole life. And I think that's one of the outstanding characteristics of who I am and the way I think and what makes me tick is that I have never had a quote unquote real job. I've never received a paycheck. I started out at 14 years old selling eggs door to door. I lived in the country, and that seemed like a reasonable way to make money. And I just have never stopped. I just have always figured I was going to blaze my own trail in life and be self-employed. So much the reason I wrote this book is for so many reasons, it's kind of the most obvious thing. It's like when you tap into what your life experience has been, that is so obvious to you that you don't realize the value it is to other people. And I finally realized that I had this epiphany moment that, I really cared most in this world about self-employed people, without a doubt. And it partly was ignited by the PPP loans last year, because as soon as that announcement was made that there was potential for some financial support, I assumed, based on history, that self-employed business owners were going to be left out. because it's always been for quote unquote small business. But the problem is, by definition, small business is too big for most of us, right? You have to usually have a minimum of 10 employees or minimum of 20 employees to be considered for funding for small business. And they've left out all us really hardworking people that employ ourselves, who our lives are contingent on help. So that just ignited a fire in me. And I decided that I needed to write a book specifically as an entire resource and guide for self-employed people. Because actually, I'll tell you, one of the fundamental problems of being self-employed is we end up running all over the place to get everything we need. We hire coaches for our mindsets and our personal development. We go to seminars to learn skill sets. We buy every course under the sun to improve our skills at Instagram or sales or every little thing. We wind up ending up having to run all over the place to get the full picture. And then on top of it, we're accused of being all over the place or being a hot mess, right? I'm like, well,
I can relate to that.
I think we all, so that's why I wrote this book. This book is a resource guide that has everything in it imaginable that I want people to leave on their desk. You're going to go back to it over and over again, because you can't possibly tackle everything that I lay out in the book in one go round.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And I know that you talk about this like self-employed ecosystem.
Yeah.
So I would love to for you to break that down, because I think it's related to what you're talking about. And it's also like, I kind of just like, what is it?
Exactly. So with that, there's two core problems. One is, as I said, nobody before this book has put everything in one place. The other core problem, or challenge, I should say, with being self-employed is always one of my most fun games. And that is to ask people why they became self-employed.
Yeah.
Everybody has the same answer, or some version of that answer, which is, I wanted to gain my freedom. I wanted to control my destiny. I wanted to control my future. I wanted to control the hours I worked. To which I reply, and how is that going for you? Right? Because it turns out to be nothing like we expect. Like it's completely uncontrollable circumstances, and we think we're gaining control. So that
freedom, right?
And freedom, right. And it's either way. It's either you are struggling to get the business off the ground, or almost, God forbid, it takes off and you've got more business you can handle. Either way, guess what? You haven't gained the freedom and the hours that you set out to. Right? Yeah. So it's those two problems combined, right? One is that we think we're gaining control. We enter what seems like uncontrollable circumstances. And then the second is that everything we need as self-employed business owners is all over the place. Now, who can deal with any of that? I mean, it's kind of remarkable. To me, being self-employed is the most badass thing you can do. It's
seriously,
right?
It is not for the faint of heart.
It is not. It is literally the most badass thing you can do. So I wanted to help. I mean, I've been at this for like I said, I've been self-employed my entire life, and I've been in business for 36 years. And I realized I know this, and I know what has worked for me, and I know what I've helped my coaching clients do for the past 12 years. So I'm a guy that creates systems for everything. So the self-employed ecosystem is a way of systematizing your business in a way that you can get as much control of your business as you possibly can, which is a lot more than what most people are currently experiencing. And the mindsets and literally daily habits to manage what you can't control so that you don't get derailed. Right. So the self-employed ecosystem, and I intentionally called it an ecosystem to bring awareness to what it means to have an ecosystem in nature. In nature, an ecosystem has various parts. If any one of those parts is off, it can kill the entire ecosystem. Right. And that is true in business. And we don't like knowing that, because we think we're going to just get away with being, strengths and weaknesses. How often do we talk about that in business? You have your strengths and your weaknesses. Well, guess what? When you're self-employed, you kind of have to be strong at all areas.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. And where you're not, you can hire somebody to fill, but who's directing it? Right. It's the same idea in traditional business. People say that don't take it personal. It's business. Like, that doesn't work for us. It's all personal.
It's all right. It's who we are.
It's who we are. It's all personal. So, there are three components of the self-employed ecosystem, and they are personal development. I'll break each of these down, and then we can go into them further if you'd like. Personal development is an essential part of in fact, I think it is the essential part of the ecosystem. Again, not what people think about going into it, but here is the reality. If you want to be successful being self-employed, your success is limited by your personal development, not skill development, but your inner personal development. Because what I have always turned to every time I wanted my business to go to a new level, I first increased the capacity within myself for which the success I was seeking could rise to. Right? So how do you increase capacity? You have to unblock your limiting, mindsets. You have to create a space. You have to have much more forward mindsets, and doing those things. And you have to, I have a series of, it's coaching work, full out coaching work. I have over 1,000 hours of training as a coach. So it's full coaching work to unblock what people, and make sure people are fully focused on what motivates them. Motivation is so much different than people think when you're in the real life. Dangling carrots aren't enough of a motivation for a self-employed person.
Nope.
Right? What really motivates a self-employed business owner is to grow to hate what they want to get away from. Right? They're sick and tired of working really hard and not getting ahead. Or they're sick and tired of not having enough money to pay the bills. Or they're sick and tired of not having the time they wanted to spend with those that they love. That actually is what is the kick in the pants that gets someone really willing to make change. That's what the personal development part is about. And that has to be done before you go past, go. The second component, which is where we're, in traditional business, we focus too much time on it. It's business strategy. You have to have really good business strategies, no doubt. The problem is, because the world is always telling us to get into action, jump on the next, now do Clubhouse, because we don't have, we have more than enough time in our hands, right? Like Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, not enough. Let's throw Clubhouse in there. The more we keep piling stuff on, more strategies, without doing the increase in the capacity work that's necessary in the personal development, that's why we feel like a hamster on a wheel, right? You're not getting anywhere. And the other component of business strategies that's really critical is they have to be right-sized for your size business. We don't have enough example of that. What we see, the lessons we learn in business are coming from Elon Musk and Richard Branson and big companies. But those same strategies don't necessarily work for a one-person business. So we need right-sized business strategies. The big difference is most of us will be as self-employed business owners. Most of us will be in relationally based businesses where most of the world is transactional. So you have to understand and work with that difference. Okay. So that's the second component, business strategies. The third is daily habits and mindsets. The reason that is critically important is because you can develop yourself personally. You can add all the strategies, but if you don't have the mindsets and the daily practices that create consistency, that is why business feels like it's up and down, up and down, up and down. It's why it's a roller coaster. All three of those components together actually accomplish what you set out to do, which was to gain control of your business and your life. But all three systems have to be at 100%.
Wow. Okay. So I'm loving this, and I'm realizing that business isn't about balance. I think people talk about balance. Oh, we need to find balance between business and life and all this stuff. I don't necessarily think it exists. I think business needs an ecosystem, right? Like if you have the right ecosystem set up, there will be balance. You'll feel more balance because
an ecosystem
is doing what an ecosystem does.
And an ecosystem in business is not balanced by balance definition. It's not all parts equal. So for example, the daily habits that I teach, which are very specific, I am so ridiculously efficient. You asked earlier, how did I get so much accomplished? Because I'm ridiculously efficient. And that's how I can get so much done. So I don't like to guide people towards anything that's not going to allow them to be efficient. Clubhouse is an example. I am on Clubhouse. I do a room every Thursday at 3:00 in the afternoon, 3:00 Eastern time. But I have a very strict rule. It's 1 hour. Because immediately I could see that Clubhouse is a rabbit hole.
Yes, it is.
Right. And I said right in the beginning, I was not going to play into that culture. I was not going to play into the hustle culture. And I wasn't going to play into the culture of people who don't have something better to do. I speak to people who have something better to do and want to do something better. So my rooms are exactly an hour, cut and dry. So everything I teach is meant to be really efficient. The daily habits that I guide my clients to can be done in 15 to 20 minutes. So that's not when you think about balance, that's a small part. You probably are going to put more of your time into business strategy, action, right? And then personal development is a close second. But when it comes to going to the next level, the proverbial, leveling up in your business, it actually begins with the personal development, which then you apply the right action to it. So it's never equal at all. It's an integration. It's happening all just like an ecosystem is. It's all happening at the same time. It's a complete integration.
So wait, so the three parts of the ecosystem, I know there's like frameworks and frameworks, but so it's personal development, it's business strategy, and the other one is mindset.
Daily habits and mindsets.
Daily habits. Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay. So where should we dig into? I mean, I'm curious, I love being efficient, and that's something that doesn't necessarily come naturally to me or to my husband. So it's something that is a learned behavior for me. Would you say that that's like a behavior that you teach people to do, or do you believe it can be learned?
So absolutely. But see, the way it can be learned though, is I wholeheartedly believe in allowing people to be true to who they are. So just a little sense of my background. I was a photographer. I still am a photographer, but to a very small degree. I'm a portrait photographer for very affluent families. Wow. But that's what I did. As I said, I'm still doing it 36 years later. I just do very little. But prior to 10, 12 years ago, that was 100% of my income. I had a 7-figure business as a single portrait photographer, right? Which is very unusual. So the reason that's important is that you over so many years, you learn attributes and ways of being super efficient. The thing because I come from a creative world and a creative background, I feel like we live naturally in a world that is critical of us. We feel like we're the black sheep. One of the things that has always driven me crazy in my personal life or any of our personal lives and in business is the idea to focus, right? So on the personal side, as kids, we're told to sit still and focus. We grow up and we start businesses and people tell us to focus on a niche. I'm like, but that's not leveraging who I am creatively and naturally, right? And I think most self-employed business owners, if you're brave enough to go into business, if you're badass enough to go into business for yourself, you're pretty darn creative, whether you identify with being in a traditional creatives or not. But it's going to take creativity. So what I like to focus on is how can we leverage who we are naturally, be more of who we are, instead of being taught productivity ideas that don't work with our natural way of being.
Love that.
All right. So let me give you a specific example. And I've actually, to date, I haven't spoken about this on a podcast. And it was the favorite chapter of most advanced readers. So I think you'll really enjoy this.
You've heard it first here, everyone.
Exactly. I've not had this conversation because, when you're out there talking about your book, you don't want to reveal every secret. But this is something I have done for as long as I can remember that enables me to be super efficient and productive and plays into who I am naturally, which is somebody who, like a lot of us, I have a pretty short attention span. I need to move on to the next thing. I call it space switching. Now, and what this means is that you do not need a big space. I live in an apartment, right? So we're not talking about massive space, but I have about 7 different work areas in my apartment, and I switch spaces based on the tasks that I do at that space. And each space has a different vibe. So what that does, it allows you to be efficient, because you know how they talk about like multitasking. Multitasking wastes a lot of time, or task switching, right? Because there's a certain time that your brain has to catch up when you've switched to a new task. But when you switch spaces, your brain is triggered instantly by the atmosphere of that space. Okay. So for example, I have, the space I'm at right now, this is my audio space. right? So right here where I'm standing, speaking to you now, I have my podcast. This is where I do my own podcast. This is where I do podcast interviews. This is where I do Zoom calls because behind me is all my branding, right? So this is where I do Zoom calls, sales calls, prospective clients, and I'm always standing. Almost everything I do is standing.
I was just going to say, you're standing right now.
I stand all day long, and that's more for health reasons. Honestly, it's just good. It's just healthy for you. It keeps your blood flowing. It's good for your spine and your back. So I stand all but one of my workstation. Actually, no, two of them are seating. So this is my primary work area. Just beside me on the same desk, because this is a stand-up desk on a desk, just beside me and the rest of the desk is what I call my admin space. Okay, that's where I pay bills, right? It's the boring admin stuff that most of us don't like to do. For that, I sit. I know that the tasks are mundane, but I have pictures of my kids in front of me. I have a Buddha. I have a cast iron sculpture of open hands, and I burn a candle. So when I'm going to pay bills, I'm thinking, because you're paying bills, money's going out.
Yep.
All right. So I want to be in receiving mode. I have the picture of my kids there, so I know why I'm working so hard. Why am I doing this? Although they're all on their own, they don't need my money. But, as parents, we always want to know that we're there for them. So I have a candle burning because it just makes me feel better. I recognize myself. I'm heavily influenced by scent. So I always burn a candle. And the Buddha and the open hands are there because that's about receiving. I have a creative workspace. So when I was writing my book, I switched to an sitting area set up on my terrace. I live on the ocean, right? What better place to do your creative work? So I read a lot of articles when I was writing my book. There I sit. There I'm surrounded by plants. I have an entire garden and farm. Literally, I have a farm wall on my terrace.
Wow.
And I sit there and look out at the ocean. So when I write, I have I kind of call it my email area because it's an area, also a stand-up desk, but it's suction cups on floor to ceiling windows looking out at the ocean. And it just suction cups. It's clear. So it's kind of cool looking. And
I've seen those.
Yeah. It's called Desk View.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw it on Shark Tank.
Yes.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. And I bought it while they were broadcasting. I'm like, I have to have this. It's the greatest thing ever. I absolutely love it. Love, love, love it. And again, it's standing up, but that's where I do all the work I can do without needing to be on video. So I'm returning emails. I might be on a regular phone call. It's in my living room. So I don't really want to be on video because I try to protect my privacy of my living room. But it's where I want to be. It's all sunlight. I'm looking out at the ocean. Like, who wouldn't want to work there? So my point is that you can set up. The other thing I do, not so much these days, but I also happen to live across the street from a WeWork, right? A shared workspace. Cool. So I try to go over there once, twice a week because that's a different vibe. But you know what? You don't need a WeWork. You don't need to pay money. You can go to a local coffee shop. What has been proven by that, by the way, is that there's a certain level of decibels that at a certain level of decibels, your brain hears it as white noise. And you actually are more productive. Wow. And it tends to be the vibe of their decimal point of your average coffee shop. So oddly enough, right? We think by going to a WeWork or a shared office space or a coffee shop, you would think it's distracting. Science has actually proved you'll be more productive at I think it's like 27 decibels. I don't remember the exact number. There's like a certain decimal point, which is typical of a typical coffee shop. It actually puts your brain into a highly productive mode because it's kind of like white noise. You're not hearing you have the comfort of a noise, but you're not hearing the specifics of conversations.
That is so funny because I was just at a doctor's office for way too long and it wasn't a coffee shop, but I had my computer. I got so much work done in like such a short period of time. And that is probably why.
That's exactly it. It is. So my point of sharing all this with the space switching is that it literally is my primary tool for getting a lot done. I just walk from space to space. And again, it doesn't have to be a massive amount of space. I don't have a massive apartment. It's just how you set it up and what does it ignite. When I sit on that chair in the terrace, my brain doesn't have to catch up to being creative. I'm there. Right?
It anchors you, like you're anchored to your spaces. We become really anchored to our spaces. So that's
really cool. And I like I said, what I love about it and I'm glad to share it is because I feel like it helps people be more of who they already are. right?
Mm.
It's not asking you to focus on one thing. It's not insisting that you be productive for productivity's sake, like it's a discipline. It's doing it in a way that, guess what? Most of us don't like to do one thing more than 90 minutes. Our brains just can't handle it. So switch spaces.
Yeah.
And then you feel better about what you're doing. You can actually get more done.
That's such an amazing, amazing tip. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. So that's in your book, right?
It is a whole chapter. And like I said, the cool thing is that amongst the advanced readers, that is by far the most popular because people are just, it's such a simple solution to a
Yeah.
typical challenge. Yeah.
But it really works.
Yeah, it
Wow.
does.
I'm gonna set up a bunch of spaces now. Like I have one space that I go to downstairs, but
Yeah.
I need more, clearly.
Yeah. No, it's a good idea.
Awesome. Wow. Okay. So when you are when you're someone who, let's just say they want to be, do you give any tips in the book of people who want to be self-employed, or is it strictly for people that already are?
So that's a great question because I actually wrote the book. This is my second book. So I kind of wrote it for the same audience as my previous book, which is called Lingo. And so I was thinking of people who are already self-employed. Could be 3 years, 5 years, it could be 20 years. Because honestly, without a doubt, if you've been in business, it used to be 20 years. I think it's probably getting less and less, but there's a point when you've been in business for so long, you may as well start over again because the world is so different than when you started.
Yeah.
And if you don't change, then you're not going to be relevant and you're going to be gone in a few years. There's a cusp, for people that have been in business a long time. But here's the thing, which I didn't realize when I wrote the book, is that, who would have known the effects of this pandemic? And as a result of that, we have the highest rate of unemployment that we've had in the US since the Great Depression. So that also means we're going to have the highest rate of self-employment, right? So we're going to have the greatest number of people ever needing to start their own businesses. And here's another important part that I don't really hear people talking about is that on one hand, a lot of people are going to be turning to self-employment because they have to.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a whole other conversation that isn't being had. And that is how many people are changing their lives because of lessons learned from COVID.
Oh my
right?
God. Yeah.
I
think about that all the time.
Yeah, people are, without a doubt, people are going to be, you can't help but look at your life. As cliche as it is, you can't help but look at life and realize how short it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You can't, how can you not, if you haven't woken up to that during this period
and how precious and meaningful, like it's, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't care how many years you have left, whether you're in your 20s and you have maybe 80 years left, or I'm 56 and I'm convinced I'm going to live to 100. So I still have 44 years to finish my work. But it doesn't matter how many years you think you have left. The reality is that it's precious. And I think a lot of people will just be making lifestyle choices. And a lot of those choices will be to leave jobs that they feel are unmeaningful and to pursue more purposeful work. So without a doubt, all predictions are that self-employment is just, it's going to be more, predictions are it's going to be in the US, 50% of the population will be self-employed by 2030.
What an amazing entry point for your book, right?
It was divine timing. Like I always say, I've always invested in everything too late. And I was on every social media way after the fact. This might be the first time I actually was ahead of the curve. Kind of divine timing.
I think the fact that we are self-employed personal brands is ahead of the curve.
It is. Well, you know what's real? I love that you said that because you know what a great indicator of that is LinkedIn. I don't know. A lot of people aren't aware of what has happened to LinkedIn pretty recently. And I became aware of it because I have a course on LinkedIn learning that came out this past December, and it's on personal branding. So if anybody wants to check that, it's really good. LinkedIn learning. It's probably one of my favorite business experiences I've ever had. There's such an amazing team. The quality that they produce is outstanding.
Wow.
And it's like, if you're a LinkedIn premium member, it's free. And if you're not a member, it's $29.99. And it's a very extensive course.
Wow.
So it's a deal either way. So with that coming out, I decided I needed to have a better LinkedIn profile. So I hired somebody to redo my LinkedIn profile. Her name's Marissa Polselli. And she was I wound up doing an entire episode on my own podcast with her as the guest.
Awesome.
To show that LinkedIn has completely transitioned from what has been kind of basically online resumes to being a platform for personal brands. I mean, they have offered so many tools on the platform now that allow us to highlight our written content, our blogs, our podcasts.
Wow.
It is a whole different platform because, and I recently interviewed, you'll love this, Ashley. I recently interviewed a guy from LinkedIn. His title is he's the head of mindfulness and compassion at LinkedIn.
That is so cool.
Like at LinkedIn, like who would have thought there would be such a position, right?
That's amazing.
Isn't
Wow.
it? I mean,
I would
who
not think
knew?
that.
I know
Yeah,
because
really.
we think of LinkedIn as being so stiff corporate, but they have completely changed to having these mindfulness and compassion programs, and they've really have changed it. Why have they done all this? Because they know the future. The future
Mhm.
is in the hands of self-employed and personal brands. That's our future.
It really is. It really is. So, yay to being ahead of the curve, and good job to LinkedIn for, having that flexibility in who they originally were. Like you said before, you have to change, you have to mold with it and move with it, or else it's going to become irrelevant.
Yeah, I even said when I interviewed this executive, his name is Scott Shute. I'd said to him, I said, it's also the only social media platform right now where you can still have a completely respectful professional conversation.
Yes. Oh
Right?
my God.
It's like the safe zone. It's the safe
Yeah.
zone of social media, and I don't see it changing, and I don't think they would allow it to change. Like you can have differing views, but you're going to have a respectful conversation. And it's still a place to gain knowledge and make connections. So they're really, if they just need to get rid of the direct messaging. Other than that,
Yeah.
they've created nirvana on LinkedIn. But it's, to me, what's important about it is that it's reflective of the future of our world, which is really
Yeah.
being put in the hands of self-employed personal brands that I truly believe, as big of an idea as it seems, I truly believe we can change the world. I mean,
I do too.
we build relationships.
We build relationships, we build products, we build courses. Like we I'm so passionate about this. I have
Yeah.
a question for you. So, someone that's listening right now that maybe isn't self-employed yet, or the person that's newly self-employed, like COVID newly self-employed, and they're
Mhm.
figuring it out and they're getting really resourceful and they're starting to put themselves out there and do the thing, but then they also feel like they have a million things to do,
Mhm.
like you were talking about before. And the person, like, I know I was the person that was like, it seems like a lot of work to be self-employed. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like, I don't know if I want to do all that work, but there's a mission that, pulls you forward and all of that. How did you get over that in your bit? Like, how did you grow past needing all that control and doing all the things?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, first of all, I also want to address what you also put in there, the sort of question. If you're currently employed and you're thinking about self-employment, please start early,
Yeah.
right? We can listen to a million motivational speakers tell you to take the big leap, jump off the cliff. Please don't, right?
Yeah.
You have a life and you may even have people that you're responsible to. So I believe in a safe leap. So start early. It's actually for my one-to-one coaching, which is the biggest investment and my longest term coaching, I only coach people that are transitioning from corporate to self-employment because I care so deeply to make sure that's done in the hands of somebody with some maturity and
Mm,
wisdom so that it's a safe leap. So give yourself 6 months to a year to know that you're leaving your job and get the support, the coaching you need to support what it might now be a side hustle, and if that's going to become your main business, give yourself time to do it right so it's a safe leap. Okay, so that's
yeah.
important for me to share.
Great.
As far as when you get in it, all right, so there are stages without doubt. So we're all going to be in the honeymoon phase when we start a business and everything's exciting and you're going to be all in. It doesn't take long before you find yourself in this. I believe in the way you're describing the feeling is what I call the messy middle. It doesn't take too long to get there, right? So you've kind of left the honeymoon period and suddenly you're in the messy middle, and the messy middle feels just like that. And that is always when people reach out to me anyway for coaching, because they will describe themselves as being a hot mess or all over the place. And that's indicative of the messy middle
I
because,
remember that place for me. I
right?
like posted something
Yeah.
on Facebook and I was like, I'm hiring an intern. Who will be my intern?
Yeah. It's the messy middle. It's like you are doing everything, you're being pulled into different directions.
Yeah.
You're trying to add more to it. So the solution to that is what I refer to as bookending the messy middle. Okay.
Mm.
So you've got the messy middle for now. The danger is you can get stuck there. The danger is you can give up. And I don't know if you've ever read the book, The E-Myth, but the E-Myth, which it was written so long ago, the E does not stand for electronic. It's like, it's the myth of being an entrepreneur. And the myth is that, yes, a lot of businesses go out of business in the first year. The second most dangerous time for a business is 3 to 5 years. And that is because if you stay in the messy middle, my theory is anyway, that point is made in the book, but my theory as to why that is the case is because if you stay in the messy middle too long, you're either going to burn out or you're going to give up. Right. So you don't want to stay in the messy middle too long. And the way to get out of it is to bookend it. On one end, you want to have somebody more of a director. Look at it as your COO, right? You're somebody who is going to help direct. And it's more important today than it's ever been because we tend to not have in-person teams, right? So we'll have 20 VAs each that have a specific task. We don't tend to have somebody that's doing 5 tasks anymore. So therefore, it's like you've got a lot of subcontractors. So really what you're doing is you're hiring like a contractor to manage the subcontractors.
Right.
Okay. So in the visual of the messy middle, that's sort of somebody underneath you that can handle all the subcontractors. On the other end, you want to bookend on the upper end, which is to get yourself a coach, I often call like your North Star coach. That's the person, because otherwise self-employment can be very lonely. So you need that person that's going to keep you focused on where you're going, that's going to pick you up when you need to be picked up, that can keep you on track with your North Star, right? So that because you're naturally going to want to go all over the place. And it's also the person who's making sure you're going forward. That's how you get out of the messy middle. Eventually, your time resides. This is when you get on the other side of the messy middle. Your time will reside in the creation. Your time resides in being a CEO,
being the visionary,
right? Being the visionary. So but that's how you're going to get into the messy middle really quick. You just don't want to stay there too long. So the way out of it is to bookend it on both sides.
I love that. That is so great. That is so true. Like getting the internal support and then like the external internal support, like from your coach, right? Like that support, that mindset support is so key. And then the system support and, oh my gosh, yes, that changed everything for me when I had those 2 bookends. I just never thought of it like that.
Exactly. I mean, I became a coach because I hired a coach in 1999 when, sort of like going to yoga class, you didn't actually tell people, because it wasn't cool and fashionable yet. So I had a business coach in 1999, which were peak years in my photography career, but it was incredibly lonely. I mean, you talk about the whole adage, lonely at the top. It wasn't like I was at a top, not the top, but a top in my life, and feeling like I was married. I had 3 kids. I had the house in Connecticut that everybody would dream of having, and blah, 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 and not fulfilled. Something was missing. And I just was, and it was, part of it was just, I still loved what I did. It just found it lonely. I found, every decision's on your shoulders. And so that's why I hired a business coach, which is unusual. A lot of people hire, most of my clients come to me when I can offer them solutions. I literally found a coach when I was at the top of my game, but I believe there'll be more. And I worked with him for 7 years. I think I broke coaching records. Like we spoke 3 times a month for 7 years. And I don't think I ever skipped a call. That's amazing. And then he retired. And when he retired, I wanted to do for others what he did for me. And that's when I sought out coach training and have been coaching ever since. Because I realized, as a recipient of coaching first, I realized that I don't care what the investment is. It comes back to you a million times over. It really does.
I've seen it with myself and I've seen it with my clients. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I'm so glad you said that. What would you say to the person who is like, okay, I'm ready for one of my bookends, right? Like I'm ready to hire a COO or their first VA. How do they know how to make that decision for themselves? Like, obviously they desire help and support, but I think a lot of people question, is it the right time or should I be investing in this?
Just know, and fundamentally in business, that you're never going to be you're always going to need to invest before you're ready to invest.
Yes, I'm so glad you said
I
that.
know. And it's so horrible. Like, I mean, we all hate it. And I still hate it too. 36 years later, it's like, oh, I hate that I have to. But you do,
You
right?
do.
I mean, and I'll give a concrete example just so that we're being real with one another. I mean, I've not paid a whole lot of attention to YouTube, but it's been suggested to me time and time again. Like, I mean, I'm a photographer. Like, I think I may have been overlooking the obvious. Like, I could have a really solid YouTube presence channel that could actually be a funnel for my services. And I'm speaking with a team now it's $6,000. Actually, it was $8,000 a month. But since I can shoot my own videos, they'll
Right.
do it for $6,000 a month. It's no small investment,
No.
right? You're looking at seven, and it's a year commitment, up minimally 1 year. So you're looking at 72 grand. Right. Are we ever, I don't care what level of success you have, are we ever doing ready to invest that? No. But do I want the results? And they made it very clear, which I agree with. There are no results for the first 4 or 5 months of that strategy.
Yeah.
It's a long-term play. So I don't care what the amount of money is, whether it is a small amount of money, big amount of money. The reality is it's never going to be comfortable.
Hmm.
However, on the other side, you can't be irresponsible. But somewhere in between there, here's a guide, and I will share this coming directly from another coach of mine, not the coach I mentioned a moment ago, but a coach I worked with specifically for my coaching practice. Because when I even with 25 years of experience as a photographer and having that business, the coaching world was so different as to how you got clients. So I needed support. So I had a coaching coach. And he taught me a strategy to make big decisions. And the strategy is this. First of all, recognize that whenever you're making decisions, there are three voices at play: the voice of fear, the voice of intuition, and the voice of reason. Guess which voice is the loudest? The
Fear.
voice of fear, right? So that's going to be your loudest voice. The voice of reason, it plays an important role, but is completely manipulated. Right. The voice of reason just wants to know that, it's not unreasonable. But as we know, you see a great pair of shoes, and I'm a complete shoe maniac. You see that pair of sneakers you really want, you will rationalize how you can buy it.
Hmm.
Okay. So the voice of reason isn't really stable. The most trustworthy and yet the quietest voice is your voice of instinct, your voice of, that intuitive, your voice of intuition. So you have to be prepared when you're at that point. Can I hire? Should I hire? You have to listen to that voice of intuition. You know that you need to. You're going to be fearful of not having the money. You're going to hate doing it. That's the way, coaching. I always say I intentionally keep my coaching rates for my one-to-one coaching anyway. I have other programs that are pretty obtainable, intentionally easy for an entrepreneur to grab a hold of. But my one-to-one coaching is not inexpensive. And it's intentionally uncomfortable for both of us.
Yep.
Right? It needs to be. Because if someone can lay down the money easily at what I charge, they're not all in the game. They're not stretching.
Yeah.
So that's welcome to the self-employed life, right? The
Right?
self-employed life is that it's not comfortable. There's nothing comfortable about it.
Nothing. Nothing. That's so beautifully said. I love everything that you just
But we wouldn't change it, right? It wouldn't change it for a minute.
We're never going back. Are you kidding me?
Right.
There is no plan B for the self-employed person.
No.
Like you're going all in.
Yep.
And it's funny. Like I've heard someone say, people don't just have money laying around to hire a coach. It's something that you make happen because you know that you want to go to the next level. Yeah.
I will tell you, that coach for coaches that I mentioned, it was 50 grand for 6 months.
Yep.
Okay. So, I will tell you, is way beyond what I charge even now. Mm-hmm. I was fortunate. I had a photography business to fund it, which is why I tell anybody looking to transition from corporate to self-employment is like, do it while you have a steady paycheck that can afford to invest in the support you need for your next venture. But that was a big chunk. But I tell you, 12 years later, what I gained from him in those 6 months, there's no way I probably wouldn't be the speaker, the author, have the coaching. I wouldn't have anything because fundamentally he completely shifted my mind from what I thought business looked like as a 25-year photographer to what it needed to be as a coach. If I hadn't gotten that, for that $50,000 is a drop in the bucket
Okay.
now,
Compared to what you
because
made.
right, and compared to what I've gained. I mean, I have to credit that investment with all my income for the past 12 years
Wow.
to some
That's
degree.
amazing. That's
But
huge.
that's what coaching should. You're a coach, right? That's what it
Absolutely.
should
It
be, and that
should.
is right.
100%.
And it's like parenting. I even say, like, when I'm complete working with a coaching client, I always feel like a parent in that they can't possibly see what they gained in our time working together yet.
No, yes,
Just like
I
our
agree.
kids, right? I've got 3 kids, they're all grown up. Like, they're just in their late 20s. They're starting to realize that
They've been set up pretty
there was an
well.
impact. Like, I actually had a positive impact on them, but it takes a long time, right? And same thing with coaching. It's like,
Good point.
yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. And so when like even the YouTube thing that you're about to, invest in, like that alone, you have to think about what is the return on investment for me personally? Like that's going to grow you personally as
Right.
well. It's going to stretch you and allow you to be seen on different levels for different people. And then also the ROI for, what's going to come back to you from it. Like it's going to be
Correct.
huge. And
Yeah.
that's with all business investments. I love that you said that. So
Yeah. Yep.
so
That's,
good.
yeah. And like I said, we carefully looking at the ROI, but, and we knowing, it may take 5-6 months, but we believe that it can build relationships
Yeah.
that will be, that will generate some relationships that will lead to coaching.
Wow. So good. You've shared so much with us today, like so many tangible things. I know that they're loving it. So just to wrap it up, what would you say is like your number one? Do you have a number one tip for the self-employed life?
Oh gosh.
I know it's a hard one.
That is a tough one. A number one tip. You know, I always joke that if I were to have another child, I would name him or her Persistence, right? Because that's what it takes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so cliche, but I don't know if you've ever seen the cartoon where there's like a gold miner digging in a cave. And it's a cartoon. It's like a still, card, like a comic strip. And you'd see this miner, he's like chipping away at the wall. And as the viewer of the cartoon, you can see that he's just an inch away from chipping on the wall. And on the other side is a treasure, which is clearly what he's
Oh,
going for. But he turns around and walks away because he doesn't realize how close he is. And that is why we need persistence. I mean, it's both good and bad. I often refer to it as entrepreneurial optimism. Entrepreneurial optimism is exactly what we need to keep going, and it can be our biggest trap because we can often get caught up in, your big break is around the corner, so you might spend irresponsibly. We were talking earlier about balance. It's being able to balance the mind games. It's knowing that you need every ounce of optimism that you have. You have to keep going, be persistent, and make sure you're setting yourself up for success. That's the point of the self-employed ecosystem, right? Because my feeling is that if I can help people have a healthy ecosystem for their business, and everything's in place, you can't, first of all, I think you have a 99% chance of succeeding if everything's set up properly. But if it doesn't, can you really fault yourself? Like, if you have created the perfect environment for magic to happen and it doesn't, can you really fault yourself? So I feel like you can live happily either way. The
hmm
goal is that we're going to set everything up in place for success.
yeah. That's amazing. I love that tip so much. Don't be 3 feet from the gold and turn around, people.
No, it's
Just
so
keep
easy.
going.
I actually tell a story in the book, the book closes because I like to bring things home. I tell the story at the end, and for that, you're gonna have to read the book. I'm not gonna tell the whole story, but and it's the first time I've ever publicly told the story in this book, is how a month before my TEDx event, was backing out.
Hmm.
And why I was backing out. I explained what was going on. I mean, I was a month from the TEDx event in New York City and backing out. That TEDx talk last year was moved to TED.com. Okay. The chances of that happening statistically, I have a friend of mine who's a producer of the longest running TEDx event in the country. She had said statistically, the chances of that happening are less than falling and hurting yourself on your toilet.
Wow.
So imagine After all these years in business, I gave this talk in 2018. After all these decades, even I came that close to walking away from a dream. And I share that story at the end of the book to say, don't. You're that close. You might be that close.
Wow. Felt that right in the heart.
Good.
Yes. Thank you so much. This was amazing. I'm so excited to read the book. And obviously, let's share with them where they can get the book and the bonus that you have and where they can connect with you.
Awesome. So, so the book they can, and then we've been very intentional as too, you can go to the selfemployedlife.me, the selfemployedlife.me. The reason I direct people there is because there are actually 9 online retailers that you can buy the book from. You don't have to buy the book from the big behemoth. And I say that because I wrote a book called The Self-Employed Life. I want to support smaller businesses.
That's beautiful.
So go to there, and you don't have to choose the big behemoth. There are 9, one of which is called bookshop.org. 10% of the proceeds go to independent bookstores.
Cool.
I'm also doing an indie book tour throughout the country, a virtual indie book tour. So I'm doing live events at independent bookstores throughout the country to support them, right? So the cool thing is, though, by pre-ordering the book prior to April 11th, by pre-ordering it, you get admission to a 2-day summit I'm doing on April 12th and 13th, which is 10 speakers that I've brought together as a professional speaker myself. I've brought together the top speakers that are going to be talking about marketing and sales and personal development and motivation and habits. Everything you need, the entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
There's an ecosystem. Yeah, it's an ecosystem of speakers. I was very intentional. And for pre-ordering the book, which Kindle or paperback version, you get access to these 2 days as long as you pre-order the book prior to April 11th. So it's pretty outstanding, but I'm excited about the book, but I have to say, I think I'm more excited about the summit. Because it just feels like such a massive gift. Like, I mean, anybody self-employed or thinking about becoming self-employed, like, you're going to get all the information you need in 2 days.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
that's so awesome.
I expect you to be there.
I will be there.
You don't have to even buy. You can come as my guest. Although I hope you buy the book. You don't have to.
I am going to buy the book, though. Yeah.
Well, you can come as my guest too.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
But I know you do well enough. You can afford the book. So buy the book.
I can afford it.
Yes, you can.
So cool. And can they connect with you on Instagram too?
Yeah. So, I'm all over socials. So, Instagram, it's Jeffrey Shaw, my name, and LinkedIn, Jeffrey Shaw author. But yeah, it's I'm pretty easy to find in social. I'm really big on the other thing you could do aside from the summit. Here's a gift that will also really help. If they go to selfemployedbundle.com, I've actually put together the graphics that are from the book that are I'm a big believer in having visuals. Again, another great tip. We need things in front of us. So if you go to selfemployedbundle.com and grab these graphics that are in the book. They're marketing, like hug marketing is something I teach in the book, and the emotional journey of your website is taught in the book. They're great companions, so you can hang on the wall and it will keep you on track. And that's a big part of my goal, is to keep people on track. So
that is so cool. Yeah. Thank you. I'm definitely doing that.
Yeah. Selfemployedbundle.com.
Bundle.com.
Selfemployedbundle.com. Yeah.
We'll link all this up in the show notes for you guys. Perfect. So it's easy access to get your book, be part of the summit, go get the bundle, and follow the amazing Jeffrey Shaw. I'm so grateful to have you on the show. Thank you.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you. Woo! We did some work today. Thank you so much for listening. You know I love my BAM fam. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who you know would love it too, because we live for the ripple effect over here. And how can you best support the show? Make sure you're subscribed, hit the 5 stars, and leave a review on iTunes, and let me know how the podcast has impacted you. I love being part of your real-time journey, so screenshot the episode and tag me and my guests on Instagram at ManifestWithAsh. Now say it with me. I am my own power source. I am the master of my own energy, and I deserve everything that I desire. We don't just talk about it over here, we be about it. Now go get 'em.